May I present to you Phantom Clowns and the 2016 Clown Panic? This is a topic which is close to my heart for a couple reasons. One is I wrote a book literally called Bad Clowns. It is not about incompetent clowns, such as the ones that may be running the government, but actually evil, malicious clowns, which again could I'm not sure that really clarifies. So there you go then. It is based somewhat on my book Bad Clowns, which came out in 2016. But here's the weird thing. In my book Bad Clowns, I go over the history of clowns, creepy clowns, Harlequin, Joker, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and so on, which I'll touch on here. But that book came out in March of 2016, and the clown panic began in August and September 2016. So it was just this sort of weird thing where all of a sudden people were like, "Hey Ben, did you have something to do with all these scary clowns across the country?" I'm like, "No, I did. It's not me running around the country dressing up as clowns. It is a coincidence, but a happy one, because all of a sudden my phone was burning. It was just crazy. I'm getting calls from London, from Paris, from Sydney saying, "Hey, we saw that you're the guy that wrote about this, so tell us about the clown panic." So with that rambling preamble, let me move on to scary clowns. So this is does anybody actually recognize this clown? This is a semi-famous clown from pop culture. It's from American Horror Story. For those who have seen that. Anyway, so we'll be talking about the scary clowns. So let me begin by talking about some of the early evil clowns, such as the Harlequin, Mr. Punch, and so on. So when you're looking at weird, scary, evil clowns, one of the first is Harlequin. And here's Mr. Punch here. So he is one half of the famous Punch and Judy shows. Now, that's primarily a British thing, as many of you may know. There's a little marionette thing that you can see there on the right-hand side. And if you've seen a Punch and Judy show, like the original ones, they are not at all suitable for children. Children should be kept as far away from Mr. Punch, Punch and Judy shows as possible, and yet children love them. They are beloved by British kids and others as well, despite it being about this abusive, homicidal Mr. Punch, and he throws his baby out. It's just horrific. If you've actually seen an original Punch and Judy show, it is not something that anybody should see without being twisted, and yet people love it. There are, of course, many scary clowns. There on the right is Heath Ledger playing the Joker, most memorably. Of course, there's also Joaquin Phoenix. Burgess Meredith, no, he did the Penguin. Cesar Romero and others. So probably one of the most famous evil clowns is, of course, the Joker, but there are many others. When I was researching my book, I came across this magazine on the left, which it just so pulpy and lurid, right? It's got official detective stories, and then it's got this woman writing a note to her somebody, and this clown stalking her, and then right next to it is California's case of Eileen Ryan. Look for somebody who sniffs glue. So it's just so like random. Anyway, so the point here is that that evil and scary and killer clowns have been part of a culture for a long time. Now, some clowns are evil. Probably one of the most famous evil and real. Most famous is probably Pogo the Clown, also known as John Wayne Gacy. Now, as I talk about in my book, Gacy's status as a clown has been sort of exaggerated by the media, because he's the killer clown, the original killer clown. So anytime you see a made-for-TV movie or documentary or YouTube video, nobody fails to mention the Gacy portrayed a clown, right? That's that's a gimme, right? Yeah, that's straight up the from marketing 101. The fact is that he was at best a part-time clown who's actually a building contractor by trade, and he dressed up as a clown maybe a dozen or so times. That was not his vocation. He just sort of did it for fun. And yet, of course, he became known as a killer clown, partly because he himself cultivated that reputation. This is something that is sort of often lost, is that after Gacy was arrested, and while he was waiting trial, he created many paintings, including the one here you see here on the left, I'm Pogo the Clown, because Gacy was not only a psychopath and a serial killer, but he was also a self-promoter. And he knew very well that he wanted to be famous, and the way to be famous is to portray himself as Pogo the Clown. And when he was, in fact, when he was executed, there on the right, it was, of course, the headlines were "Killer Clown is dead." So there's that. So again, the part of the point here is that some of them are fictional, some of them are real, and there's a couple other real ones. This is a strange couple that some of you may remember the Bundy Ranch standoff. From years and years ago, there was this fight over cattle grazing, and you sort of this folk hero, standoff against the government. It was almost sort of a hints of Waco type that. Anyway, so this couple, dressed up here as Harlequin and the Joker, showed up to Clive Bundy's ranch, and they were too radical. This is one of the bizarre parts of the story is even these nut jobs are like, oh no, we hate that government. There's all sorts of drones watching us, but you clowns are a little too weird for us. So they kicked him out. And unfortunately, and this is not funny, it's actually part of the tragedy here, is they ended up actually shooting and killing several people in a Las Vegas shopping center. So they didn't do it dressed as clowns, but this is the same couple. So anyway, there's that. Now, of course, many clowns are unintentionally frightening. Does anybody recognize? I can't hear you because you're muted. Raise your hand if you recognize who this is. All right, Willard Scott. Yes, this is later Willard Scott. He's still got those mischievous eyes and that sort of creepy ass. Anyway, he was one of the original Ronald McDonalds. And you can see why, someone in McDonald's marketing said, no, we need, this Willard, we love you, but no. And there's lots of reasons why clowns are unintentionally frightening. I talk about that in the book. One of them, of course, is that it's a mask, right? It's the way that we communicate with other people and the people we talk to is, we see their facial expressions. We hear the intonation. There's lots of information that's conveyed by their expressions. If those expressions are covered by a mask or grease paint, it's creepy, right? Because you never know quite what they're going to do. And also, traditionally, clowns didn't speak. So there are, of course, some speaking clowns, Bozo, for example, and Ronald McDonald, but mostly Bozo, actually. But traditionally, circus clowns didn't speak for the simple reason that they were touring, right? They visited 30 countries during a season, and they can't be fluent in however many languages. So for the most part, traditionally clowns are silent. They, if it's a backyard party, they'll do tricks, but traditionally they're quiet, and of course, because you're not hearing anything, you not know anything about them. So as I mentioned, most clowns are fictional, and they're only in entertainments. And then there's, of course, Stephen King's Pennywise, and Gacy, and so on. But what I'll be talking about today is sort of the clowns that are neither here nor there, neither fish nor fowl, if you will. So they're not the real clowns. They're not clearly fictional clowns. They're kind of real-ish sometimes. And as a skeptic, this is the sort of clowns that I'm fascinated by, right? Because one thing I'm always curious about is like how do we determine what's real or not? Whether you're talking about Bigfoot or God or miracles or whatever else, how do we parse out what parts of this are actually happening in our world, and what parts are purely fictional and imagination? So again, as I write eloquently there, the clowns seem to exist somewhere in the twilight between the cold, clear reality of daylight and the slumbered stuff of nightmares. So here's a depiction of killer clowns that I actually commissioned for my book. And there's a couple things to note about it here. One is that, first of all, I love the I love the it's this sort of blend of caricature and just weird ass scary clowns. But you'll notice in the background there's a white van. Now, that's relevant because, and as you'll see in a second, in so-called real life, and again, take a make of that what you will. Oftentimes, predators are said to be lurking in white vans, sometimes black sedans. So in folklore, there's a whole tradition of white vans with clowns lurking in them. And I remember in the DC snipers case, where there were the two guys, Malvo and I forget the other guy's name. They terrorized Washington D.C. for several weeks, and it was a huge story. Everyone was looking for two white guys in the van. Well, it was two black guys in I think an Oldsmobile or something. So again, it sort of speaks to how the public's perceptions of threats are change over time. So let's move on to the phantom clowns. So the phantom clowns really first appeared in May 1981. Now, keep in mind that as I mentioned before, clowns per se have always been with us. There have always been comical figures. There's always been jesters, clowns, things like that. And typically, those clowns were ambiguous. And this is one of the things that you see in the evolution of the idea of the clown, is that traditionally, for example, one of the reasons why Stephen King's Pennywise is so scary is that to Western audiences, American audience specifically, clowns are supposed to be happy. They're cute, they're funny, they're having fun, they're friendly. But if you look at how clowns traditionally were perceived, particularly in Europe, clowns weren't good. They weren't bad, but they weren't good. They were trickster figures. So sometimes they were good, sometimes they were bad, and so it was within the context of America, assuming the clowns were good, because the clowns that most people saw, in pop culture were good clowns. Bozo the Clown. And there were, of course, many, many bozos, Ronald McDonald's and others. So it was within that context where Stephen King said, "Hey, let me turn this happy, smiling, friendly clown upside down and scare the hell out of people." But to many people around the world, particularly Europeans, they're like, "Why did you think clowns were good? The clowns were never good. Sometimes they were good, sometimes they were bad, but there was this sort of ambiguity, which of course lends right into the trickster figure, the character." So, but in terms of phantom clowns specifically, the first reports date back to 1981, and there were reports in Brookline, Massachusetts, asking police officers to watch for a vehicle containing potential child abductors. It was what? An older model van, as I as I just said, with a broken headlight, no hubcaps, and ladders on the side. So again, this is if you ask the public to think of some creepy ass, van, somebody wearing, pedophile glasses and, and handing out candy. This is what you go to. You go to the van. Not only that, but it was full of clowns. So several children said that the clowns tried to lure them into the van with promises of candy. And there are other reports that they were lurking around in elementary school. So you can see why, in this context, people would get freaked out. But that case in Brookline, Massachusetts, was only one in a series of mysterious threats by the clowns. So those clown reports spread then to Boston, Franklin Park, and other places as well. So Brookline, Massachusetts, then Boston, and so on and so on. And all the time, the police are being asked, by parents and concerned citizens, hey, what are you going to do about these clowns? Why, there's these clowns like lurking around trying to abduct children. What are you doing about it? And the cops are like, we're not finding these clowns you're talking about. So is this sort of, all the searches on all APBs came up empty. So finally, this is where sort of the clown panic sort of got crystallized and legitimized. So a Boston public school official issued a memo that said, well, I'll just read it to you. It's right there. It says, "It has been brought to the attention of the police department and the district office that adults dressed as clowns have been bothering children to and from school. Please advise all students that they must stay away from strangers, especially those dressed as clowns." Now, as a skeptic and a folklorist, of course, this is straight down the pike stranger danger, right? We saw this in the 1980s and 90s with Satanists, the Satanist scare, right? You had Geraldo Rivera saying there's Satanists lurking behind every tree, and this actually falls right into that, as I'll talk about in a second. So the New England reports subsided, but then there were reports in Missouri, Kansas City. This is one of my. So when I was researching the scary clowns, you'll see like news reports, and there'll be little nuggets where like, what? So this is an elementary school. This is a sixth grader said he's reporting a clown. He says he was by the fence and ran down through the big yard when some of the kids ran over there. He ran toward a yellow van. Once again, the vans, right? He was dressed in a black shirt with a devil on the front. As clowns do, I don't know. He had 2 candy canes down each side of his pants. Really? Okay, the pants are black too. I don't remember much about his face. Now, imagine being a police officer, getting a report of this. You're like, okay, let me bring in a sketch artist here, and we will look for. We'll see what we can find, right? And so this is again. This is a illustration that appeared in the Kansas City Star. Based on that, it actually also appears in Lauren Coleman's book, "Strange and Mysterious in Mexico." So, Mysterious America. So once again, you see the motifs. You see the clown running to his other clown buddy in the white van after apparently failing to abduct any children. One of my favorites was a young boy who said that a clown had an Uzi machine gun in one hand and a machete in the other. So this is like a mashup of like Rambo and like Jason from the Friday the 13th movies, but in clown costume. But hey, the kid says it must be true. He says the clown fired off 5 rounds. Now, I'm not a gun guy, but I think with an Uzi, I think 5 rounds is like a millisecond. Anyway. So there's. I'm just gonna say a couple things about this report. Raise flags for me, but anyway. The boy. Okay, so this boy's going to school. There's a clown with the Uzi in one hand and a machete in the other hand. The clown fires off rounds, but the boy attacked the clown by throwing his book bag at him. Suddenly, apparently the clown's like, no, this book bag from this school child is far far too dangerous for me to engage. I'm gonna run off. And so that did not happen. Um, anyway, you can see where this is going. So, and I'm leaving out lots and lots of stuff. If you want to read more about it, again, there's lots of stuff I've written both for Skeptical Inquirer magazine and also in my book Bad Clowns. But I'm sort of just giving you an overview, and I'm happy to stick around for some Q&A afterwards if I haven't already eaten up all my time with my computer issues. Sorry. So, what are the explanations for what's going on, right? So this is at the end of the day, again, this is where the rubber hits the road, right? This is where the investigator in me is saying, okay, well, what's going on here, right? And is it a couple different things? So, one explanation is that there are actually rogue, child abducting, serial killing, pedophilic cannibal clowns. I'm leaning towards no, but you got to consider all the possibilities. Another possibility is that these reports are the product of imaginative children and/or mass hysteria. Now, as some of you know, I've researched mass hysteria, also known as mass sociogenic illness (MSI), pretty extensively in many cases, including the Pokemon panic. I co-authored a book with Bob Bartholomew on it, so that's certainly part of the mix. Another one is that there are fictional characters somehow brought to life either through ostension, which is a folkloric term, or through magic, such as Slender Man. So I recognize that some of these explanations might seem outlandish, but they are. I'm just passing along. I'm just telling you what some people said they might be. So there is a concept called a tulpa, TULPA. And it's kind of complicated, but basically the belief is that if enough people believe in something, then it manifests in reality. So this is almost a version of the harmonic convergence 20 years ago, when everyone's like, if we all hold hands, then it will usher in an era of peace. It sadly did not happen, as you may have noticed if you're following the news. But a parallel notion is that that again, if enough people believe in a creature, for example, a Bigfoot, a Slender Man, that somehow that collective consciousness or vibration or power or whatever it is creates them. And that this is actually a version of the secret, right? The whole Rhonda Byrne law of attraction idea, where you have if you just wish hard enough, then things will create. If you're not wealthy and you don't have the perfect life you want, you're just not wishing hard enough. Now, keep in mind, of course, this is a version of faith healing, right? This is a version of miracle working, right? So if you really need something, and you pray to God for it and you don't get it, well, you didn't pray hard enough, right? It's your fault. It's not that God doesn't exist. It's not that God doesn't care about you. Which, by the way, is the title of a really good Rick Springfield song. "God Don't Care About You" off his album "The Snake King." I recommend it. It's quite good. Anyway, off on tangents today. So the point here is that this is all part of the same sort of package of beliefs, that if you just believe in something hard enough, it'll imagine. Another idea is that these are actually paranormal or interdimensional entities. So again, this notion that and this, I mean, to be fair, some of these are fringe beliefs, but again, they are ones that were offered. So the idea is that if you believe that these clowns were actually lurking around abducting children, or at least trying to do so, and yet they were never caught, the question becomes, why weren't they caught? Why couldn't they be caught? Now, this belief parallels Bigfoot, right? And so some Bigfoot believers say that, well, of course, Bigfoot hasn't been captured or found because it zips out of our dimension every time it's about to be caught, right? Anytime a hunter is about to shoot a Bigfoot, the reason that doesn't happen is that Bigfoot just sort of vanishes or whatever else. So again, this is all part of this whole same notion that that these entities are not actually real. So again, despite all the everyone's best efforts, no evidence of the phantom clowns could be found, not even a size 60 shoe print, which would be super. Speaking of Bigfoot, right? It's just like, Bigfoot shoe prints. So this is, if there's ever evidence for phantom clowns, I want to see this. This would be unique. So to just to sort of put it in more context, right? So even though clowns were by far the most commonly reported threat, there were other characters that were reported. Bart Simpson, Ronald McDonald, turtles, gypsies, policemen, um, sort of like whatever kids might see at Halloween. Some kid said, "Hey, maybe these are trying to abduct us." There were a small handful of accounts. By the way, this is from an excellent book by Gillian Bennett and Paul Smith, Urban Legends, 2007. There were a small handful of accounts where the candy the clowns were handing out was supposed to be drugged, or rape was hinted at, or where children were said they would be chipped up and put in deep freeze and eaten for lunch. Now, we've all heard of Ron Howard, famous director. He was Opie, still doing lots of great films. This is his brother Clint Howard, for various reasons is not as famous as his older brother. I'm not being mean, just he has a. I once talked about Clint Howard to my co-host Celestia Ward on my podcast Squaring the Strange, who's a caricature artist, and he has ugly isn't the right word. It's a unique face. It's sort of like Steve Buscemi, right? And so Celestia said that Clint Howard's face was a gift from God to caricaturists because it was just so wild. Anyway, I don't mean to go off on that. But anyway, so yeah, so this is a shot from a film called The Ice Cream Man. Not a great film, although I have seen it several times. 1980s era horror film, and you see a fly and eyeballs and this and that. So in some versions of this variants, they were reported to butcher the children. And so again, this is sort of a Hansel and Gretel meet Sweeney Todd twist. And again, so the question becomes, okay, well, if these clowns are abducting kids, that's a big if, what are they doing with them? Are they killing them? Are they draining their adrenochrome for QAnon? What the hell are they doing? Well, here's your answer. So one of the best ways to look at these phantom clowns is through folklore. I mean, that's essentially what they are. And so the research that I've done has been I presented this topic on for folklore conferences and so on. And it's important to keep in mind that most of what circulated about these clowns was informal, right? So there were some news reports, but it was mostly gossip, right? It was mostly, did you hear about the clowns? People talking in school, parents talking at meetings. Occasionally there were police reports and so on. But for the most part, these were sort of they weren't formal proclamations. Now, every now and then there would be a police statement. I've read you a couple before, or a statement by the school system. But for the most part, these rumors were shared as rumors are shared, right, among people at the post office and supermarket and hanging out in parks. And so one of the interesting aspects of this was that people would, of course, share the warnings, right? Because parents would hear about, hey, did you hear there's scary clowns, at the kids' school, and they would share it with other people. These original reports were in the 1980s, so this is long before social media. And of course, these days it's all amplified through social media. But nevertheless, the warnings were being shared around. And it's important to recognize that they were shared not necessarily because the parents and the police and school officials believed that it was real. So some of them did, some of them didn't, but it was a better safe than sorry, right? Like they, I, hey, Linda, I have to tell you, I heard, is little Susie okay? Because, at the PTA meeting, and I don't know if it's real or not, but just so you know, there's been clowns lurking around the school. So, so make sure that little Susie's okay. So, of course, these rumors and warnings get shared, whether or not the people who are sharing them actually believe them or not. Jan Brunvand, who's a friend of mine and sort of one of the godfathers of urban legends, he pointed out in one of his books that New Jersey police questioned 700 school children, many of whom were petrified by the rumors. But once again, the police couldn't substantiate the existence of the clowns. So you have this dynamic where parents are concerned, kids are somewhat concerned, teachers are, the schools and this and that. And so again, it's like they don't know what to make of it. Like, well, a lot of them think, well, this is probably bullshit. But then the question is, well, hold on here. If it's bullshit, why did I get a memo from the superintendent? Right? If there's no truth to it, why is there a statement from the police saying to watch out for clowns? So there's this pattern of sort of legitimizing it. And once again, in each case, the clown sightings followed a very specific pattern. Police followed up on the sightings, but developed no leads. No arrests were made. No one was ever actually arrested for, as dressing up as a clown, luring children. And of course, no children were ever abducted. See, this is the other part of this. It's like, even if you think that the clown panic was real, even if you think there were the clowns, they're incompetent. They can't do it, right? If your assumption is that these clowns lurking around in white vans are actually trying to abduct kids, then you can kind of be reassured that they can't do it. They're incompetent. They're no one's being abducted. So go home. So and anyway, so it's just, in each case there's this sort of bell curve pattern where the reports sort of come to a peak and then they sort of plummet when nothing comes of it. Now, so the original Phantom Clown Panic, again, as I said, emerged primarily in the 80s and 90s, and it resurfaced around the world. So there were reports in Scotland, in Honduras, in San Pedro Sula and Tegucigalpa, where I visited before. Also, there was resurgence in Chicago in 2008, and so on. So this is one of the things to keep in mind, is that once you have this notion of these scary clowns, they keep coming back if they were ever there in the first place, right? So it's like a bad penny, right? A rubber duck. It's unsinkable. There's always coming back, and as I'll talk about in a second, they emerged with a vengeance in 2016. So, as I mentioned, the question becomes, okay, well, what the hell's going on here? There's all these reports. There's school warnings. There's some TV news reports about it. There's warnings, this and that. Again, no children were abducted. No hard evidence ever emerged, and this suggests that a form of social delusion was at play here, right? Because there's nothing for the cops to do. They're like, the people are demanding the police do something, and they're like, what do you want us to do? There's no there. We can't arrest nobody. Of course you can, but then of course then doesn't go anywhere. So what are the different contributing factors? So one of them is the scary clowns in the media. So one of the original explanations was that children were simply describing creepy clowns they saw in films. So in later times, it would be the miniseries It, Pennywise. These days, it would be one of the Jokers in the Batman films. At the time, Killer Clowns from Outer Space came out in 1988. So again, there were lots of Cesar Romero. So there's at any given time there are accessible pop culture references to evil and creepy clowns, and that just spiked dramatically, as you can imagine, since 1990 when Pennywise and It came out. Another contributing factor, as I touched on before, is the satanic ritual abuse moral panic, right? So, as many of you know, in the 80s and 90s, and even somewhat to some extent today, although that's sort of a different topic, it was around these clowns emerged around the same time that we had the satanic ritual abuse panic, right? You had different preschools and child centers where people were accused of sexual abuse, physical abuse, and so on, including of clowns. And again, that's a whole other topic. I imagine many of you are familiar with what happened. If not, there's some excellent books on it. But again, right around the same time, you have this panic that was gripping national media, right? As I mentioned, Geraldo Rivera and others. And in both cases, keep in mind that you had an outsider, right? You had an outsider in one case, unknown clowns. Another case, Satanists lurking behind every tree, who were supposedly out there trying to abduct children, and yet none of it actually materialized. Another possible contributor is that at the time, in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a series of high-profile child murders in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, the clown panic, as I mentioned, there were different places, Boston, Massachusetts, and elsewhere. But many of the clown reports do emerge in the South. I'll talk about that in a second, particularly Alabama and Georgia in there. So, so again, keep in mind that it's entirely possible that at the same time that people are hearing about these phantom clowns, they're reading in the newspaper like more missing kids, right? And they're like, well, they haven't caught the person. It later turned out to be this guy named Wayne Bertrand Williams, but at the time they didn't know that. So you can see how, if you're a frightened parent, especially, you could be like, oh my God, I don't know whether these clowns are actually abducting these children, but there are missing. Kids do go missing. There's runaways. There are very rare abductions and so on. So that could have been sort of one of the latent anxieties about that. In terms of how the Phantom Clown panic sort of the origins, right? I talk about how it sort of spread through social media and also on news media. But the question becomes, where did these first come up, right? Who first claimed that clowns are doing this? Because there has to be one inciting incident, right? One index case. And so Sandy Hobbs and Cornwell, writing about this in their book Supernatural Enemies, asked, many of her informants suggested possible origins were parents, police, and the mass media, right? So again, there's this chicken and egg thing, right? Why are people talking about clowns? Because people are talking about clowns. Why are people talking about the Kardashians? Because people are talking about the Kardashians. It's like, it doesn't mean there's anything substantive there. It just means that once it gets in the public's consciousness, people latch onto it. One student reported that older children told the stories to frighten younger children. And this is actually a pretty common folkloric motif. I think I've even talked with for AFS previously about different boogeymen, social boogeymen, right? So you have these folkloric figures that are said to abduct children, scare children. Here in New Mexico, we have La Llorona. La Llorona is a female ghost spirit that is said to lure children near waterways, and she lures them to drown them. So when I was growing up here, I and many of my classmates heard stories of this ditch witch. And they say, don't go near the river, don't go near the ditches, don't go near water, because La Llorona will get you, right? And so, and I wrote about La Llorona in one of my books, Mysterious New Mexico. I have a chapter on that legend. It's fascinating. But again, the point here is that there's a social control aspect. There is a boogeyman aspect. Don't do something bad because someone bad will come and get you. And I'm going to wrap up my talk on just hitting that motif again. So hold on to that. So I think that the best way to think of the phantom clowns is as something called phantom attackers. Now, most people don't know what a phantom attacker is. If you're into folklore and sociology, you probably have some idea. But basically, these are mysterious figures, usually male, not always, but usually male, and dressed in some distinctive way, who are seen and reported menacing citizens in public, especially children. Here's a Speaking of Celestia. Celestia did this this little piece of art for me, which I just love. Uh, in a pink 82 dots with 23 accomplices. That's a nice little touch. Thank you, Celestia. So here are some examples of phantom attackers, and you may recognize some of these. Probably one of the most famous ones, certainly in England, is Spring-Heeled Jack. Now, Spring-Heeled Jack has been seen in many places around the world. When I was visiting Newfoundland about 10 years ago, there were reports of him there, dating back many decades. But Spring-Heeled Jack is a mysterious, dark cloaked figure that was seen and reported to be threatening and scaring people, mostly women and children, again, in London from the 1830s to the 1870s. So for half a century, give or take, uh, people in London and elsewhere were saying this figure would jump out and scare them, and then spring away. Right? That's why they call him Spring-Heeled Jack, because he could leap great distances, like like Mario or Superman or something, super kangaroo. Again, never caught, but scare people and then go away. The Mad Gasser of Mattoon is a fairly famous case here in America. This happened in 1944 during the height of the Red Panic, the Red Scare. There was this figure seen skulking around homes and spraying an unknown temporarily paralyzing gas in the occupants. Again, there's entire books have been written on this. I've written about it. Bob Bartholomew and I also wrote about it in a couple of our books. It's a fascinating case. And once again, you have this. So this figure had like wearing a gas mask. So again, once you have male, strong, shadowy, pops in, scares people, and then sort of vanishes. The Phantom Slasher of Taipei, 1956, was reported to stalk the streets, trying to slash people with a razor. Would leap out of dark alleys and slash and then go away. And one of my favorite examples is the Monkey Man Panic, the 20 of May 2001, which I've written about. I think I may have even given a talk for you guys years ago, where residents in New Delhi, India, reported seeing a half monkey man leaping between buildings at night, typically. Again, scaring people, sometimes pushing people, but never abducting anybody, never seriously injuring anybody. And then you try to catch them, and then they just jump off. So there on the left is a depiction of the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. So it's just the creepy, weird, almost BDSM. There's a lot going on there. That's all I have to say about that. And then here on the right-hand side is one of the many broadsheets from England, and you see Spring-Heeled Jack, the Terror of London. And people love this stuff. The public just ate this stuff up, right? So on one hand, they're afraid of it because many people sincerely were frightened of these figures. Like whether they personally had seen Spring-Heeled Jack or not, they heard about him because everyone's talking about him. And there's all these broadsheets that are showing these terrifying depictions. And the bottom it says, the history of this remarkable being has been specially compiled for this work only, by the best authors of the day. Our readers will find he has undoubtedly succeeded in producing a wonderful and sensational story, every page of which is replete with details of absorbing and thrilling interest. Now, I just want to take a second to draw parallels to modern crime dramas, right? True crime is enormously popular in America and around the world and has been for a long time. So this is the same thing. This is same thing happening in 1870, right? people love sensationalism, people love crime, people love threats, people love scary things, as long as it doesn't happen to them, right? As long as Spring Heel Jack is scaring other people, they're fine. But when it comes to their territory, that's a different thing. So again, I think that the most accurate and the most insightful and fruitful way to think about these phantom clowns is as phantom attackers. And so once you recognize that these clowns are part of a broader thing, they're part of a broader category, which have been studied and researched by psychologists, folklorists, and so on. So again, as I touched on, here's what they have in common. So they all had sincere eyewitnesses who reported their encounters to police, and were reported in the local news media. In each of these cases, including the clowns, residents took action to protect the public from further attempted attacks. The reports appeared in a given community suddenly, but then soon faded away with no resolution. Spring Heel Jack was never caught. The Mad Gasser of Mattoon was never caught. The Monkey Man of New Delhi was never caught. The Phantom Clowns were never caught. They always somehow escaped just before authorities could close in, and really, there's no evidence that they ever existed in the first place. So, with that setting the stage, so this is the backstory to the most recent panic, which is again 10 years old, almost exactly 10 years old, within a couple months. So, so the clown panic again is as I said, it waxed and waned. It was in the 80s, 90s, and there were reports in 2008, and just sort of sporadic things. But they really came back with a vengeance in 2016. And that's when, in August, in Greenville, South Carolina, there were reports of clowns in a residential building block that were luring children into the woods. Yeah, so some of you may already guess where this is going, right? Luring children into the woods. And most of the reports were from children, unsurprisingly. And once again, no one was actually harmed by the clowns. So no child was ever actually abducted or grabbed or attacked or anything else. It almost happened, or they tried to lure us, but we were too smart for that. Or, the clown had an Uzi, but I had a book bag. So there you go. I fought him off. So the story was that in a copse of woods behind these buildings, there was a trail that led into the woods and led to a house supposedly populated by clowns. Now, you can imagine the police. Okay, well, all right, we will go look for this clown house. So they went into the woods. There was no house there. There was a trail there because it's Greenville, South Carolina. There are trails through woods. People take shortcuts. So this whole Hansel and Gretel type thing was completely fabricated. There was no. The police didn't find anything at all. Now that doesn't mean that the kid didn't actually see a clown, although they probably didn't. But it just means that this is what happens when the police try to investigate. So let me just quote briefly from an ABC News story, because again, every now and then when you're researching these reports, there's like one nugget that really just sort of crystallizes it. ABC says one resident said she was in front of her apartment one evening when one of her sons approached her and said he had seen clowns in the woods whispering and making strange noises. She went over to the area where her son mentioned and observed several clowns in the woods flashing green laser lights before seeing them run off. So she looked in the woods. She saw somebody, maybe clowns, maybe not clowns, with green laser lights, which you can buy at Target, and then ran off. So again, what does one make of that? What do police make of that? Who knows? Quien sabe? Once again, as you will recognize from this pattern, the report faded with no arrest or conclusion. But that was only the first. That was the sort of the very first case in Greenville. So pretty soon after that case, it got news. And I remember hearing about it, of course, because I'm if anyone's going to hear about scary clowns, it's me. So I heard about it, and sure enough, so I'm following this in real time, right? And so it's bizarre because as someone who wrote about this, I mean, I'm seeing like it's hard to describe. It's like if you're a volcanologist and you spend your time researching how volcanoes erupt, and all of a sudden a volcano is erupting in real time, and it's just fascinating to sort of see how this whole thing unfolded. So sure enough, as I kind of predicted, the panic did not go away, but instead it spread to, of course, social media, because why wouldn't it? As one does. So within a few weeks of the Greenville sightings, and in later months, of course, there were lots of viral clown videos, typically taken with cell phones. Here's a couple examples of clowns, just usually at night, at some distance, and this became an enormously popular thing for people to do, right? Hashtag clown sighting. Um, so all these, again, that I at one point I thought about making a little video, but it would just be sort of, you get the idea. It's just someone at night, in a car, and there's driving by, and this scary ass clown is sitting there looking at you or doing something weird overall. So this went viral, and of course, what did it do? It inspired copycats, which also went viral. So the internet is being flooded with these scary ass creepy clown videos, which were almost all faked, as as you can imagine, right? Um, they're not faked in that there's no person there. There's a clown there. That's that's not the faked part. It's a guy in a clown costume. It's someone who's wanting clicks on social media. It's not that they stumbled across a creepy clown lurking in the woods or trying to duck somebody. So in this context, there were actually clown lockdowns. Yes, clown lockdowns. That's right. So in September, police in Flomaton, Alabama, as I mentioned, many of these occurred in the South. Investigators were deemed credible threats to students at Flomaton High School. The Flomo Clowns, and there's a picture of them on the right, had a Facebook page where they said, quote, "I kill people for a living." I don't think they do. I think I think it's a prank, but who knows? And had several gun emojis. I mean, look, if you really kill people for a living, you don't put that on Facebook. You just don't. I don't care how stupid you are. You're inviting the FBI. I'm just saying. Anyway, one post stated, "It's going down tonight." Sure enough, as you might expect, it went viral, and 700 students sheltered in place in two schools while they were placed on clown lockdown. Yeah, the police. Well, again, keep in mind here, right? The context here, as you all know, is that at the time, and unfortunately still to this day, there are occasional, very rare but real school shootings. So they do happen. Again, they're not common at all. Any given child is far more likely to be injured or killed in a car accident than being attacked by a clown or being shot at school. But nevertheless, again, the background here is that schools are occasionally, thankfully rarely, the siting the locations of shooting. So because of that, police have to take this seriously, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a clown or not. If anybody, clown or not, says they're going to threaten shoot up a school, if they actually do that and the police ignore it, head's going to roll. That you're going to get fired. That you will So the police have to take it seriously, even if they're. It's pretty clear that that these clowns are not actually going to do it. So sure enough, the police investigated as they should, and they found a woman named Michaela Smith, 22, who was arrested for making terroristic threats while posting as an evil clown. She pled guilty, and I think in 2018 received 5 years of probation. Um, yeah, so there's that. Uh, but the Flomo clown was only one of the most popular ones. There were actually several. There was another school threat appeared on Facebook in Troy, Alabama, where two people dressed as clowns brandished a knife and ranted for several minutes about how they were going to kill people. It was seen at least like 500,000 or 50,000 times, and once again, the police are like, we can't not look at this. It's not. We don't think it's true, but police resources got to do it. Otherwise, if it does happen to be real, then I don't want that on my conscience. Once again, two high schoolers were arrested for doing that. So keep in mind here, none of them are actually clowns. These are all school kids. These are all high schoolers. Well, in the case of Michaela, she was 22. She should have known better. But keep it. And also, so again, we can look at it. We can say, okay, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. This is a waste of police resources. It's scaring people, which is all true. And one 11-year-old girl in Georgia took a knife to her middle school. And when the teacher asked her why she had a knife, she said it was because she was going to protect herself from the clowns, which she'd heard were coming out of the woods to attack children. So, she's 11, right? So did she? I don't know. I mean, it's 11-year-olds do weird stuff, and did she sincerely think that there was a clown coming to get her? Probably, right? So these sorts of rumors and panics can have consequences. Speaking of consequences, for the first time, as far as I know, in history, evil clowns were the subject of a White House press briefing. And yeah, I remember sitting on my sofa watching the nightly news, saying, "Wow, this is happening right now." So on October 4th, a couple days after my birthday, in fact, press secretary. This is during the Obama administration, and God, I miss Obama. Josh Earnest was asked about the clowns. It said, a reporter said, "What is Obama doing about these scary clowns?" And being a White House press secretary, at least one who doesn't routinely lie, he was trying to give an accurate answer. He's like, "Well, I don't know that the press has been briefed on this particular situation. Obama probably has more important things to do than to be concerned about this, but obviously this is a situation that local law enforcement take quite seriously, and they should carefully and thoroughly review perceived threats to the community and do so prudently." So this is exactly the sort of response you would expect from any responsible, like, uh, don't know if it's real, take it seriously. Next question, please. So what were these, right? So there's a couple things going on. So many of them were in fact admitted hoaxes, as you can surmise. So for example, there's a North Carolina woman said that a scary clown had knocked on a man said he'd knocked on his window at night, and he faked the incident. He called the cops saying, "A scary clown knocked on my window," and they're like, "No, no, it didn't." An Ohio woman said that a knife-wielding clown attacked her on her way to work, which is why she was late to work at McDonald's. Also did not happen. So there's that. So let me just back up for a second. So when people ask me about the Phantom Clown panic, and particularly the 2016 one, like when they say, "Well, what was it?" there's no simple answer. There's no blanket. It wasn't one thing. It was a mix of viral social media posts, hoaxes, pranks. There was some mass hysteria going on, lots from some contagion where people are seeing things that aren't actually there. Lots of rumors, and again, many hoaxes, and also copycats. So, somebody would hear about some viral video going, some scary clown video going on the news, and they're like, "Hey, I could do that. I have a clown mask in my in my closet. I could be on local or national news if I just put on the clown mask, drive by some lady in a Walmart parking lot at night, scare the hell out of her, and then all of a sudden people are talking about me." So there's lots of different aspects to it. But I want to end on one of my favorite cases, which is Wrinkles the Clown. Now, Wrinkles is a curious case. I won't go into the whole story. I'll talk for reasons I'll talk about in a second. But basically, Wrinkles was so once again you had these scary videos, and this is a screenshot from one of them. And the video begins with this girl on the top there sleeping peacefully in her bed, and all of a sudden, beneath her drawer is this full size adult clown who is creeping out of underneath her bed, and he gets up and is looking up at her. So you can imagine why why people were just terrified and freaking out about this and so on. So the story goes that Wrinkles was slash is, I'll get to a second, a clown that could be hired by parents to scare their kids. So the idea is that parents, if there's a misbehaving child, as I talked about earlier, there's this whole boogeyman aspect of this. Uh, People say, hey, if you watch this video, and if you don't do your homework, I'm going to hire Wrinkles the Clown to come get you. Now, I can imagine this probably worked. This is like I would be scared shitless if I was a kid seeing this. And so that's the story. So anyway, there were a whole series of these videos. There was actually a phone number where you could call. And parents could actually call Wrinkles the Clown. He's just a phone call away. This is actually a documentary film, which is going to be premiering on Netflix next weekend. It's already available. I think it's on Tubi or something else. I mentioned it because I'm in it. I'm not Wrinkles the Clown. Spoiler alert. But I am interviewed for this documentary. It's a good doc. It is weird and creepy, and so yeah. So anyway, if you're at all interested in scary clown and the Phantom Clown Panic, check out Wrinkles. You'll dig it. Speaking of documentaries about misbehaving clowns, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my own documentary, which a few of you, especially Laura, saw 2 weeks ago, where it won Best Documentary Short at the Atlanta Documentary Film Festival. And it will be premiering. Yes, thank you. And it will actually be screening in 2 weeks at the Indie Vegas Film Festival, where I will be. I'm actually going out there. Yes, I thank you. I wish I could screen it for you. Maybe at some point I can, just sort of with a private link or something. But it's a cool, weird doc, and people seem to like it. So, all I can tell you for sure about the Phantom Clowns is they will return. This is not the last time we've heard of the clowns. They emerged in the 80s, 90s. They came and went. And if there's questions later on, I can talk about why they specifically emerged in 2016. That's an interesting part of this. And by the way, I was actually interviewed for a documentary about the clown panic about 2 years ago. I haven't heard from them in a while. I have no idea whether it's still in production or not, but It's possible that that at some point down the line there will be a second documentary about creepy clowns, and I will be there. Anyway, for further reading, you can check out some of these books. I mentioned some of them in the talk, and again, if you're interested, check out Wrinkles and also Crotchy if and when it's available. So, with that, I will stop sharing.